When we lift up our voice, we need to be heard without the kind of machines that are in our society. My voice is being lifted up all over this land in the cause of peace and economic and social justice. And your presence here this evening gives us an opportunity to talk about what we might be able to do to create a new vision for America and the world. Because this isn't only about me. It's about you, it's about you, and you, and you, and you. It's about all of us. Think for a moment the kind of America that you'd like to see, the kind of world you'd like to see. This process of envisioning is so important because there is a world that is sometimes beyond that which is apparent. It's a world of dreams and hopes and visions. That world exists not just out there, but it exists inside of us. There's something about your participation in that world that brought you to this campus or to this community. We have to think about how is it that we've all come to this moment. Think about the journey that any one of us has taken in life. Think about the times that you had a dream, that you had a hope for something, and how you actually created it because you had some belief in it, because you pursued your dream, whatever it is. Each one of us has had that experience in life where it's something we really wanted to happen, and we began to take steps towards it and acted on it, but it started with something that was inside of us. Not just out there, something inside of us. Something, call it a vision, and that process of envisioning, of thinking about the world that we want to create is very powerful. And it becomes even more powerful when you start to speak it. The power of the spoken word is amazing. You know, it's even recognized for those of you who have followed scriptures in the Christian religion, the Gospel of St. John, they talk about in the beginning was the Word, and they equate word to this great spiritual power. Our words have real ability to create possibilities. So if you have a unity of vision and word and then deed, that is the stuff of which dreams are built upon. And it works for each of us as individuals, and let me tell you, it works for us as a nation. The philosopher and psychologist Jung wrote about something called the collective unarticulated consciousness, an awareness that he believed that so many people had, but they just didn't speak about it. But they held as a group. Think of how a shared vision has such transformative power. If one of us can have a vision that can impact on the world, in our own lives, start with our own lives, and one of us can have a vision that can impact on the world, think of what happens when so many people share the same view of what's possible in a society. Real power there. The power to help to catalyze a qualitative change in social and political structures. I mean, real deep change. But we sell ourselves short. We start to think, well, you know, it'll never happen. And then that self-fulfilling prophecy of despair just takes over. Think of how many times any of us have ever shorted ourselves on our dreams. Where there's something we really wanted in our heart, and then somebody said, you know, not going to happen. You know, friend, parent, relative. Oh, I want to be a doctor. You know, you're never going to cut it. Or I want to be an Olympic champion. You know, you just don't have the stuff. Think of how many people have their dreams cut short because they buy into what someone else's version of the world ought to be. Happens to every one of us. Every one of us. What could be more profound than to share a vision of a world where people could live together at peace, a world where we can literally set war aside, a world where we share a vision of people as being interconnected and interdependent, a world where we kind of catch an evolutionary impulse towards human unity. If we hold that vision, we speak to that vision, and we act upon that vision, we can change the world. How does the world change at any rate? I could tell you that being involved in government, a lot of things just drift. People don't really consciously think about how they can become as architects of new worlds. Any day. Any day. But, you know, there are moments when we sell ourselves short. Where a word of discouragement, where someone says, not a chance, we buy into it. Happens in everyone's life. When I was first starting in public life as a freshman at Cleveland State University, running for city council, I was 20 years old. Started college a couple years late. I worked for a few years. To say that I wasn't taken seriously is an understatement. Because at 20 years old, I'm knocking on doors, and I'll just relate to you a story which will tell you what the whole campaign was like. I was fresh with this enthusiasm of a young city council candidate in a big city. One of the youngest people ever to run for a city council seat in Cleveland. And in the cosmic way that things have it when you first try something for the first time, you know, if you are a basketball player, you know, that shot that you take, that first shot, you know, that might be your destiny right there. If you're a diver, that first dive, that might be your career. It's like there's something about the first time you try something, the whole world has some kind of cosmic balance that weighs in. Well, the first door I knocked on as a city council candidate in Cleveland, a woman came to the door. She looked at me and just walked away. She just disappeared. And I'm standing there like, okay, you know, I want to give her my first pitch. I got to try this out. You know, I'm running for council. Okay, and but she came back. She opened the screen door, and she takes a step forward, and her arm extends like this, and she's handing me something. So I put my hands out, and she drops some coins into my hands, and she said, I thought I already paid you for the paper. So, look, I mean, you know, I was psyched. I was at that door. I was hurt. Well, ma'am, I'm your city councilman next time around or something. And so that moment could have been the moment that I just said, okay, I don't look like a city councilman. I could have taken that as saying, well, I think I'll go back home. After all, I was starting the campaign on my own street, so I didn't have to go too far. But I had this desire to serve, and so I kept going. And after a while, people just had an understanding, well, there's this young person running for city council. And there were people who were telling me, not a chance. There were people telling me, don't even try. My Aunt Betty, who was one of the people responsible for me being able to survive an inner-city childhood in Cleveland, Aunt Betty called me the night that the story broke in the news that I was running And she says, "Oh, Dennis, you can't run. They'll find out about your uncles." I grew up in the inner city, okay? I mean, my family had a lot of ups and downs, and some of my uncles got in trouble, okay? Nothing, earth-shattering, but they got in trouble. All throughout that first campaign, I was told why I couldn't win. And you know what? I lost. But I came closer than anyone had ever come to beating an incumbent who held the seat for many years. And I came back 2 years later, and I won. Now, if I had accepted the discouragement that was there everywhere, I would say that I couldn't be standing before you today. Because throughout my career, and this is true of everyone in this room, think about what it is that you try to do or want to do. I pursued this vision and this dream of public service. And no matter the ups and downs, I stayed on it. And it's like a series of steps, continuing, step by step. And, sometimes you stumble. Sometimes it doesn't work out the way you think it'll work out. But just continuing and acting on that vision. And so by the time I was 31, I was the youngest person ever elected mayor of a major American city at age 31. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's like when people came into my office, we talk about, I didn't look 31. People would come into my office, and I'd be sitting there at the desk. And people were old enough to be my father or grandparents, and they'd come in. I'm sitting at the mayor's desk, and they'd come into the office, and they'd look around. Okay, where's the mayor? I'm sitting there, right? Because they couldn't believe that someone so young could get elected. But the reason I was able to do it is because I acted on a vision that set aside everyone else's idea of what a mayor ought to look like, of the age a mayor ought to be, of the kind of city we could have in Cleveland, because it wasn't just about appearance, it was about real economic issues. And I acted on that vision. I tell you that as the backdrop for this process of running for president and wanting to lead America in a different direction. Because the vision that I have now, having learned about how you can actually draw that vision in and make it express itself through you and any of you. The vision I'm speaking about now is a vision of a world where peace is inevitable, where we catch this advancing tide of human unity and actually bring the peoples of the world together in a common vision of sustainability, renewability, and lift up the globe itself. Protect the earth. Now people will say, oh, well, how impractical. Where's this guy from? The moon? No, from the streets of Cleveland, from the inner city, from living in a car when I was a kid. If we approach this idea of governance, this potential to create a more perfect union, if we approach it with passion, with the power that's in our hearts, with this kind of desire for change, with the belief that we can really change this country, with the belief that we can make it relevant, with the belief that we can make it possible for people to be able to have lives that maybe wouldn't even be imaginable in another time, if we approach it with that kind of spirit, we bring forth the same kind of power that the founders of this nation brought forth when they created the United States. Because the American Revolution was really about an evolution. It was an evolution in human affairs. It was an evolution away from monarchy towards a democracy. It was an evolution away from a religion which controlled the state towards religious freedom and pluralism. Those were great ideas and big ideas, but people had the confidence that they could bring those ideas and create a structure inside the government to make it happen. We sell ourselves short in this political process. We make it all seem about, polls and how much money you raise. And that's all it is. How vacuous, how barren. I mean, anyone who's ever read Eliot's Wasteland knows that our politics today really is about shoring fragments against the ruins. And it's all about quantification. Oh, what's your poll numbers today? Not what do you believe in. But from our beliefs is where we create the power for change. So that's the backdrop of this discussion this evening. We'll have plenty of time in this Q&A to talk about Iraq and healthcare and all these other issues that are so important. But I just wanted to take a second of your time to get you to think about the broader context of this thing we call governance, to think about your role in the visions that you have, how you have the power, not just of the vote. We understand that. But that the world that you envision has potency and legitimacy and need never be discounted. So I come here this evening to ask you to join in this effort of taking this power which is in the human heart and applying it to this cause of seeking and creating a new nation. To realize that we are unlimited in our potential to create this new nation. But the only limitations we have are the limitations of our own thoughts, are the limitations that we put on our own vision, of our limitations and our belief that we can't project from our own awareness the conditions of a new world. When we come into contact with that power that's inside of us, that transformative capability which is inside of us, I'll tell you what it's like. It's like discovering fire. It's like discovering fire. But that fire, it's not out there. Fire's in you. It's in your heart. And when you cause that passion that fuels it to just burst forth, everything changes. Everything. Thank you.